Yeah, what do you say?
Welcome. Welcome to Helicon West. I'm Ashley Wells, your MC for the evening and the director of the Creative Writing and Art Contest. Thank you for being here. Helicon West is an uncensored public reading series. We regularly host published authors alongside community writers to promote and support all levels of skill, ability, and craft. If you'd like to read during the open mic, you can sign up on this sheet near the coffee service in the back. If you'd like to donate to keep Helicon West going, we have bookmarks on the coffee table with a QR code that we need. We acknowledge that Helicon West operates on the territory of the Northwestern Band of Shoshone Nation. Our events are made possible with support from Sugar House Review, the Logan Library, the USU English Department, and community volunteers. For our full land acknowledgement statement, interviews with featured readers, merch, and more, visit heliconwest.wordpress.com. We have a couple requests in our new home in the library. First, during our event, please shut the doors behind you when entering or leaving the room. Second, if you partake of coffee, please use a lid and keep the cup in your hand to minimize the likelihood of a spill. Consider bringing your own reusable drink container next time with a screw-on lid. That would be good for the library and good for the planet. Tonight is a very special celebration of our extremely talented students, our winners of the annual Creative Writing and Art Contest. We'll hear our winners read their incredible poetry and prose and see the art winners' work displayed behind me. This night and this contest would not be possible without the St. Paul's staff and the judges who very generously shared their time and expertise. First up, we'll have our first place winners, Nolani Hatfield reading poetry, Amber McEwen reading fiction, and Gregory Dilly reading nonfiction.
Okay, hi everyone. Feel really awkward going first, but here I am. So, I have 3 poems for you today. The first one is called Trial by Fire, and it is kind of about reconciling the parts of people that you don't really get to know. Like, it's kind of about my dad, who's here today, so here's your surprise. But yeah, it's about, I feel like you forget that your parents had a life before you knew them, and my dad served in Vietnam, and one time when he was younger, his dad asked him to burn down a barn, or a building on his farm, and then it caught fire, and then he got this reputation as a pyromaniac. So that's the context of this poem. So it's called Trial by Fire. And this is a short version. Mid-July, days past my 20th birthday, 3 continents away from where I've eked out my life, I'm following 2 men with rifles slung over their shoulders, beanie to feet dressed in olive drab green. My white Fila sneakers are dirty, covered in clumps of elephant shit and a thick layer of dirt. We've been told to stay silent and single file, but my father keeps lagging behind, peering through dusty binoculars or making conspiratorial quips with the Dutch guy, who can, by the way, understand the guide's Afrikaans almost perfectly. Through the trees within range of sight and rifle, there's a hyena. One guide holds up a hand and we wait, silent except for camera shutters and shuffling feet until it passes, evaporates into savannah. We're gathered around a muddy elephant dig-out when the guides ask if my father has ever been in the bush before, because he keeps acing their questions. Why did the elephants dig so deep? Why do other animals flock to their muck? And for a moment, I expect him to say no. He says yes, in Vietnam. My father tramped through Vietnamese bush, through malaria, through the weight of legalized, propagandized murder at my age and younger. Does he forget sometimes, like I do? War, an abstract and elsewhere for me, but not for him who lived it, who lived in it. I hate that he won't get hearing aids, that I have to half shout when he's around, but I forget that he didn't squander his hearing on concerts like I do, that his memories were blown out by artillery. A man asks his son to burn down a barn. The barn burns, but so does the power pole. When the trucks come with big-nosed hoses and questions, the man points his finger to flesh and blood, his son, who had been seen buying matches. Later, the neighbor's chicken coop caught fire and fingers found son again. Pyromaniac tried, if not true. Father forced his son to apologize for what he didn't do. Father will never say that he's sorry. Men love to start fires they can't put out. That's my first one. And then my second one is called Patience is a Virtue That Rips Me Apart. Pinch half-dead vermilion skin between teeth and peel, peel. On the third pass, the blood barrier breaks, another exercise in restraint. Bloodshot, heavy-lidded and lusting, my eyes are a wraith that trails in your wake, groping after slept-on scraps. I'm bathed in stained glass refractions, some sort of sacrilegious saint, alone in the back of the chapel, draped and dripping with self-pity and desire, asking if I can finally take the bait if I have completed my pious wait. This is my atonement, my appeal to saving grace. I have been patient, peeling myself away. I have tried, but I am still weighed as wanting. And that one's just kind of about desire. And then my last one is kind of more upbeat. It's called Metaphysics of Being. Do you imagine the heartbeat alone, quaking aspens, mycelium, the vast, impossible migrations of monarchs, of barnacled humpbacks and Arctic terns, not evidence enough to sway away the fear, the hope that humanity is in a category all on its own? Admit it, you're a bit of a cynic. Do you trample on other things that thrum with the cold speed of living? Is that why you're petrified, why you won't see the soul in the sparrow song, in the willow's throng? Lofty and glowing, you theorize, waste time, but empathy lifts lonely hearts from their rest. Is this going now? Okay. I don't think I'll say nothing. Oh, it's fine. Okay, it should be fine. I can talk about. My name is Amber McEwen, and I wrote this short story in Amber Karen's fiction writing class that was specifically focused on writing research-based fiction. And this is also the same class that the other two fiction winners also submitted their pieces from. After exploring my interests, I chose Tibetan Buddhism to be the object of my research. I watched documentaries, checked out books from both the Logan and the USU libraries, consulted over 80 web pages and articles, started practicing meditating myself, and even attended a meeting of the Cache Valley Sangha to meditate with them when I was practicing Buddhist here in Logan. I'd say that about 80% of everything I learned while researching never made it into the final product, but the level of research that I did gave me confidence as I wrote a story set in a culture and location unfamiliar to me. What drove the story were What drove it for me were my thoughts about queer experience. I often think about the million little tragedies throughout history of queer lives that were unable to be lived freely and fully, and I see this story as one tragedy among uncountable others. My protagonist, Tashi, is a Tibetan boy living and studying in a Buddhist monastery. He is in love with his best friend, another studying monk named Sangye. Monks may not pursue romantic connections and are sworn to celibacy. I named the story Tashi's Vows because he has both the vows he's taken as a monk and his secret vow that he keeps inside himself of loyalty and affection for Sangye. In the section I'm going to read, Tashi is 16 and seeking a moment of quiet by a stream near the monastery. Tashi listened to the water flowing by, closing his eyes and trying to center himself. He breathed in for 4 slow counts, held for 5, breathed out for 6. The extended exhale told the mind and spirit to rest. Controlling the breath and guiding it in this way encouraged the heart to slow. Thoughts of being held up as a star pupil, despite how little he deserved it, rose into his perception, and he let himself feel that concern and then try to let it go. He focused on the rising and falling of his ribcage, on the sound of water, on the feeling of air flowing in and out through his nose. When his feelings and memories directed him to think of the past few hours, he directed himself to think of the here and now. He couldn't feel it helping yet. The first time that he had been in meditation as a child, he thought that his teachers were trying to kill him. It felt impossible to breathe the way they wanted them to, and he and Sangye and the rest of their classmates had giggled on the exhales, red-faced and out of breath, only to be instructed to do so once again, and again. Eventually, a firm hand succeeds in shaping you the way that it wants. He and his classmates learned not to breathe. He felt his heart finally begin to slow. In for 4, hold for 5, out for 6. Slow and patient, time is your friend. The universe is infinite in its understanding and scope. His thoughts drifted to Sangye's smile, and Tashi pulled them back to the river, To his laugh, and he brought his attention to the filling and emptying of his own belly with air. To the look of satisfaction and pride on Songye's face whenever he wanted to bait, and he tried to focus on the feeling of cloth against his palms. A toad croaked close by, somewhere down and to his right, but he kept his eyes closed. Upon hearing the panicked squeaks of a mouse, he opened his eyes. He pulled his sandaled feet back towards himself upon seeing a fat toad next to his foot with a flickering mouse tail sticking out of its mouth. The mouse managed to pry itself out in a flash of brown, only to get snatched up again. The toad swallowed the mouse whole, hawking its neck back to get it down. The death squeals of the mouse took far, far too long to quiet. Tashi watched with a secret fascination in the thought that he might be sick. The toad crawled on its way, its newly fat belly dragging across the dirt and stones. Frogs jumped, as they should, but Tashi had always felt that there was something off about the way that toad crawled. Predator and prey was a natural and necessary dynamic, but he couldn't help but feel disturbed, feel that something wrong had just happened. He wanted to kill it. If he found a particularly sharp stake, he could stab it through, or he could use one of the rocks on the ground. Maybe he could kick it hard enough. Tashi began to cry. Even with all his studying and all his efforts, his instincts remained violent. Hot tears filled his eyes and blurred his vision as the toad crawled away. He got up from his stone to kneel on the ground, dirtying his robes as he did so. His robes gave his shins a cushion, protecting them from the ground and rocks, and he moved his clothes out of the way to feel the bite of the earth against his skin. He cried, tears rolling down his cheeks, and put his hands to the earth and embedded stones, bending forward to press his forehead against the ground. His tears ran into the dirt, creating mud, and he prayed for forgiveness. His back and knees eventually began to ache. He raised his head at the sound of sandaled footsteps many minutes later, horrified to have an audience. Seeing that it was Songye coming down the path, he scrambled to his feet, brushing his robes down into normalcy and dropping his head to hide his crying eyes as he wiped them. I thought you disappeared to this place, Songye said, his sandals disturbing low clouds of dust. They started a mandala. Want to come watch with me? His brows furrowed as he came closer. Tashi, are you alright? I'm fine, Tashi said, and Songye's hands came up to hold his shoulders. What's wrong? Sangmu seemed impressed with you today. That must have felt good. You shouldn't refer to Lama Sangmu as just his first name, Tashi said, keeping his head down and wiping his eyes. Oh, I don't care about that, Songye said, bending and trying to take a look at Tashi's face. Maybe you should try it. Sangmu wants with feeling, he said, letting go of Tashi's shoulder to tighten a fist. No, Tashi said, giving a weak laugh. Songye dropped his hand, glad to see a small smile from him. Well, then what's gotten to you? Everything, Tashi thought. He parsed it down to the smallest truth he felt he could divulge. It's a bit of pressure. Songye pulled Tashi into an embrace, and Tashi closed his eyes, holding him tightly. Eventually, Songye sat them down across from each other and took Tashi's hands in his. Meditate with me. Perhaps we can ease your mind. Tashi nodded and closed his eyes, praying that Songye couldn't feel his quickening heartbeat through his hands.
That's perfect, yeah. Thank you. Okay, so my name is Gregory Gilly, and I actually wrote this story for Ashley Wells' nonfiction class, and it is called Ventriloquist. The birds couldn't see me peeking through the tiny slit in my makeshift board, but I could certainly see them. It was spring '99, dogwoods bloom. Trees unfolded their buds, slowly exposing themselves to the pink hue of a Blue Ridge Mountain morning. The birds stirred in the thick underbrush. Chickadees, starlings, warblers, and thrushbirds sang their flute-like songs. Eole, eole echoed off the eastern hardwoods, breaking the silence of the dense forest. I spent most of my time roaming and working this farm, halfway between Route 40 and Alexander, tucked against the corner of the Brooke County line. I knew every square inch, from the dust-covered mailbox to the primitive pine that walled the backfield. Aside from my family, the only company that entertained me was my second family, the creatures that called this place home too. It would be a serious offense not to understand my second family, I thought, so I opened the drawer next to the analog phone, flipped through the yellow pages, and dialed the number in the library in town. Hello? Yes, ma'am, I need some magazines about birds, was all that I could muster. It occurred to me in this moment that despite always being excited to answer a ringing phone, I never actually dialed to an anonymous person. After a few thoughtful questions from the librarian, she deduced that I was looking for nature magazines and told me she'd grab a couple off the shelf and put them behind the counter. Okay then, I replied and abruptly hung up the phone. I searched the entire house until I found my mother and begged until she agreed to pick them up for me. A dust cloud chasing a gold Corolla caught my attention, and this was the sign I was looking for. I sprinted toward the back door of the house to meet her in the kitchen, and I saw them. Spread against the counter like wings, 2 magazines were mine for a month, National Geographic and Ranger Rick. What happens when a volcano erupts? Life among the chimpanzees and migratory birds of North America were some of the articles that shined on the front pages. I snatched them from the table with a "Thank you, Mom," and took them upstairs to my bedroom. Most birds that migrate from the eastern part of the United States do so along the Atlantic Flyway, following the Appalachian Mountain Range south towards Florida, where they regain their strength, then leap over the Gulf of Mexico in a single night. Among these species of migratory birds is the wood thrush. This bird closely resembles most of the migratory birds in the region in that they lay 3 to 4 pale emerald eggs in their nests. Both the males and the females care for the younglings after they hatch, and they're monogamous. What makes this bird unique is that it has a Y-shaped voice box. Because of this, it can sing 2 different notes simultaneously, creating ventriloquial songs that are often described as internal duets. Belly down on my bed, my heart thrust itself against the wolf pattern blanket as I realized that I left my brother and father alone in the meadow. The screen door whacked with a shut with a muffled thud, and I skimmed through the daisy-filled meadow like a sparrow, eventually finding them against the tree line that borders Lloyd Miller's farm. Must be nice to take a long break in the middle of the day, my brother said as I walked up to the tractor. Did you get your magazines, nerd? I kept my mouth shut, though I wanted to call him a walnut brain, and sat next to my father on the wagon. He smirked at me and leaned in. Bet you a quarter your brother runs over that groundhog hole. I stretched my neck around the wide hips of the John Deere, and I said, "You're on," and watched the hole slowly approach. Sure enough, the tractor lurched to the side as the bottom half of the tire disappeared into the hole. Whether it was the sun rays permeating my head, or release of tension, or a combination of both, I threw my back against the hard wagon and laughed for 2 straight minutes. I spent the rest of the wagon ride with my arms folded and tucked behind my head, smiling as the clouds floated by. My father, through years of practice, was always good at this, though. Despite the manual labor throughout the day, he would keep our minds off the work by making small bets with us, telling jokes and singing or humming while he curled his mustache. He had a sixth sense for it, and it was always reassuring to hear his voice in the field. One particular family of wood thrushes lived in the fork of the rhododendron bush directly beneath my fort. In the evenings, I would read about them in my magazines, and the next day, watch them through my binoculars and listen as they sang their melodies. I watched the eggs hatch in spring, the chicks hunkered down while both parents went off to find insects, watched them grow feathers, and eventually I watched as they took wobbly flights to neighboring trees. And so it went for the remainder of summer. Work dominated my time through the dog days and into fall. Realizing I hadn't been to my fork in weeks, I ran out, excited to see my family of thrushes. I knew the little ones would be ready to fly south any day now. Just a few weeks ago, the chicks started from tree to tree with a single flip of their wings. When I finally climbed to the top, the woods were silent. No squirrels darted around the underbrush, and no birds chirped. I knew in my heart that I wouldn't see them again, so I climbed down from my perch and raced the sunset back to the house. The 4 of us sat around the dinner table with the television scratchily playing the local news. "Can you pass me the green beans?" my father mumbled. "What?" my mother answered in reply. I said, "Can you pass me the goddamn green beans?" My brother and I looked at each other with open eyes, searching for answers. Surely this was some kind of joke, I thought to myself, as I shoveled mashed potatoes in my mouth. The rest of the dinner was silent, and when I finally watched my mother fork the final green bean from her plate, my brother and I stood up, cleared the dishes, and went upstairs to our room. My brother's room was at the top of the stairs, down the hall was mine, and right beside that was my parents' bedroom, separated by two thin sheets of floral print wallpaper. That night, after sleeping for several hours, I awoke to the sound of hushed fighting, muffled by the walls between. This went on for several more hours as I drifted in and out of sleep. That night started out like any others. The only sound at the dinner table was the sound of utensils clanking, cups sitting, and my father's white tube sock bouncing on the floor beneath the table. I went upstairs to my bedroom as usual and propped my pillows against my headboard and started flipping through my magazines. A few hours passed, and before I knew it, I was asleep with the magazine folded on the bed beside me. The hairs on my arm raised as something loud startled me awake. I could hear him talking in a primal tone that sounded like it came from the coal seam beneath the farm. "Well then, I'll just go, and you'll never see me again," he shouted coldly. Silence followed, then an explosion of words spilled into every corner of the house. "If I leave, I'm not coming back. You know I'm not coming back." "Leave then, I'm tired of fighting about it," she countered. I sat up on my bed, forcing the pillows between my back and the wall, clutched my blanket between my toes, and stretched the face of the wolf over my knees and around the back of my head. I plugged my ears as the shouts echoed louder through the halls. I grabbed my magazines and started reading. "Birds, fly away, Y-shaped voice box," I said to myself as the sound of a crashing lamp jolted my body like a defibrillator. "Focus, bird, voice box." I searched for new words, any words. "Birds, fly away, voice box, birds, fly away, voice box." The bedroom door slammed. I could hear the heavy footprints plodding through the hallway, down the stairs. The engine of the old truck barely turned over before it was thrust into gear, and the tires tore through the gravel. I can still remember the sound of those tires when they hit the asphalt of that Route 40 flyway.
Just leave it like that for now. Wow, thank you. That was a great start. So next up, we'll have our second place winners, but don't forget about open mic, sign up, feel free to send it around. Our second place winners, we have Basil Ping, who's also first place winner in art, reading poetry. We have Megan Boyce, and then Megan Boyce reading fiction, and Nick Carlson reading nonfiction.
I sat in the very back. Don't worry, don't worry. I'm not practicing them because I don't want to. Wait, does this work?
Yeah.
You have to use the controls, don't? There you go.
Can I keep spinning it?
I don't know.
You can also take it off and hold it if you'd like.
I don't. Okay, so, okay, these are poems. This one's called Icarus as God. I've always believed that my anger is holy, a gift from God pushing me towards the right. A gift from my father, capsaicing passion, heat cauterizing heart. The way he sees the world is right, straightforward, clear to the touch, no fractals and moles from the judge's mallet. The way I see the world is right, prismatic, sweet like a penny. Each girl in meaning sings a change apart, my thoughts fluttering towards light. All colors monochrome of white light's presence. Vibrancy lets waver when eyes are closed, but my burn from seeing God through golden rouge, molten halos singeing air, sad burn with smell. I smell repetition, sour dead. Okay, this one is called Love Dude Meadows. And like D-E-W-E-D, not D-U-D-E. It's not just some guy, I promise. Okay. I believe in the meadows of hearts that aren't my own, but sometimes I wake up drenched in fear, turned into a scared animal from my dreams, and I doubt the flowers people feel for me. I back myself into a corner, away from flowers and love-due meadows that reach for me, and I scatter them. Once I feel human again and the dreams are gone, I gather the petals and stems and leaves, and try to rearrange them back into a flower as a wilted patchwork apology. Okay, one more, don't worry. This one is called Monstrous Belief. Ooh. Cute. Okay. mud-drenched ventricle, sky of the cavern dusted with darkened stars. Hollow atrium, is it yours or mine? Draped colors, walls to the surrounding world, darkness cloaks light, mountains now fast asleep. I've counted each wiry rib, pitted runway, a blink of calm perches on the valley. The concave way they rest, buried inside, pulled, cracked outward. Exposed bone to cool air, nervously gentle, intent, shivering. Touch smooth bone, warm marrow right to my lips. I'm shameful of my bright adrenaline. Now in dark earth we can breathe clearly. Feed soil with iron, sweet collagen. Okay.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is Megan Boyce. I also wrote this fiction short story for Amber Karen's research class. My research interest was a magic lantern. So a magic lantern was a real invention used back from like the 17th century. It was like the early form of a slide projector and image projector, so the ancestor of that image projector, I guess. But people would paint slides and project the images onto the wall. And back especially in the 20th century, people would use it to tell stories or give lectures about travel. So that gives you some necessary background for my story. It's called The Magic Lantern. I'll be reading an excerpt from the beginning. Silence lay over the audience like a blanket of snow. Briggs shifted in the hard wooden chair, craning his neck to see over the tall man sitting in front of him. Nothing was happening yet. It was still just the Magic Lantern Man pacing around in shiny boots, soaking in the captivation of the room, filled to the brim with people from their town. Briggs slumped back down in his chair and crossed his arms. He looked at the chair next to him, where his brother Burton sat. Burton was looking down and fiddling with a piece of string, his back hunched. He never used to be this quiet. Their parents had always wanted to see a magic lantern show. Now they'd never be able to. Briggs was only 9 years old, but he felt a lot older. Only a month ago, his parents had pointed at the magic lantern posters plastered all over the windows at the general store. Come and see the fantastical magic lantern man, the posters read. Hero of journeys to lands real and mystical. That was before the scarlet fever had come knocking at the door like one of those traveling salesmen, and mother and father had made the mistake of answering. Stay here and take care of your brother, mother had told him, right before Aunt Greta and Dr. Williams had ushered him and Burton away out onto the dusty street. Aunt Greta said it was a miracle that he and Burton hadn't gotten sick. Briggs glanced to the side. There she was, Aunt Greta, though she wasn't really their aunt, sitting on the other side of Burton. She leaned over and nudged Burton, who didn't look up from fiddling with his piece of string. It's about to start, she whispered, patting Burton on the back and giving Briggs a smile. The sound of footsteps on wooden floorboards met Briggs' ears, and Briggs looked up to see the magic lantern man with his shiny boots, pointing to a white sheet that was hanging on the wall. When I snap my fingers, he announced to the room, a circle of light will be projected onto this sheet through the magic lantern. And inside the circle of light, a picture will appear, just like magic. In 3, 2, 1. The magic lantern man snapped his fingers. Briggs slowly sat up straighter, staring, eyes wide at the sheet that was now filled with a glowing circle. The light was beautiful. It had a hazy quality to it that made it feel like something out of a dream. It showed a tower made of crisscrossing metal beams, extending high into the sky. The colors of the image were vibrant, and the light remained steady without flickering. Briggs turned to study the magic lantern itself. The lantern was a metal box sitting on a 3-legged stool, and the projection of light was shining out of a metal cylinder at the front of the machine. Briggs wanted to go fiddle with the machine to see what made it work. Look at what the magic lantern can do, boomed the magic lantern man, pulling Briggs' attention back to the front of the room, where he once again became riveted by the circle of light. This tower was built for the Paris World's Fair just last year. The voice of the magic lantern man faded into the background as Greta leaned over and whispered to Briggs, "You need to use your artistic talent and paint the story of the Goblin Princess for me one day. You and Burton can tell it for me through a magic lantern. What do you say?" Greta smiled, and Briggs smiled in return, before once again directing his gaze to the front of the room. He didn't take his eyes off the circle of light until the show was over. Like if he looked away for even 1 second, it would disappear. Many years later, Briggs entered his workshop. He pushed the door open and entered the cramped space. Dozens of glass slides for magic lanterns sat on shelves lining the entirety of the room. In the middle of the workshop sat Briggs' work table, where he painstakingly painted the small glass slides. The window sat high on the wall, letting in just enough sun to bathe the workshop in golden light. The golden light also illuminated Burton, who was busy trying to balance a glass slide on top of his head. "Burton!" Briggs shouted in outrage. Burton jerked in surprise, and the glass slide came tumbling off his head, almost shattering on the floor before he caught it. Burton lost his balance in the process, though, and the reverberating thud of him falling on the floor made the glass slides on the shelves shudder. Briggs winced on behalf of his pieces of art, and then snatched the slide out of Burton's hands. Burton popped back up to his feet with a cheery "hello," which made Briggs' wince morph into a glare. "You know you're not supposed to touch those," said Briggs, and he gingerly placed the glass slide back onto his easel on his work table. Burton looked anything but chagrined. He grinned widely, walked closer to Briggs, and whispered, "I have proof that parts of our stories are coming to life." Thank you.
Did Nick not make it? All right, that was just beautiful. So we'll move into our third place winners then. We have James Ashby reading poetry, Ashley Sabin reading fiction, and Clarissa Casper reading nonfiction. And don't forget to sign up for open mic.
Like she said, my name is James Ashby. I'm from Richmond, Virginia. My major is creative writing, of course. I'll be reading a poem from a collection that I'm working on. And probably the biggest piece of information that you need to know whenever reading any of my poetry is my minor is in the classics, emphasizing on the Latin language. So everything for me and my poetry, all roads lead back to Rome. And so whether it's history or mythology, there's lots of lines coming back. This poem is called Faces. Look there, my uncle told me. That was the big difference. But my 10-year-old eyes saw no silver spoon soaring in the sky of the indigo August night, while we walked down the path of gravel dirt long after the night. What about that one? He asked me, pointing to 3 crystal grains clustered in line along the southern ridge of Idahoan sky. This time I did see the diamond droplets that formed his belly, and from my uncle's finger the curves of a bow and the shaft of a spear shimmered into sight against the curtain of the smoky sky. Then he told me the magnificent story of a fearless hunter and his goddess friend, the virgin huntress who very soon fell for him, but that her brother, that golden twin, could not bear to see his beloved sister abandon her holy oath. And so, loving and protecting as he was, by raising fingers strummed across amber lyre, he turned that dashing man into a stag. Then that hunter once thus transformed raised up his voice in desperate cry for help, but all that sounded was the brutish call of a frantic beast that trembled twiggy trees and warped water's waves. My uncle paused the tale and pointed nearby the sky to the caramel-coated tails of his loyal companions in the sparkling forms of his might and my glory. But when their sleeping ears were pricked by their hunters' beastly cry, the grasser's tongue was not recognized. They charged their prey with protruding claws and fangs, and upon his nimble legs, like stumbling fawn, the dashing man through forested woodland flew. But still those hounds gained ground at first, until across the brackish bay he swam to flee, the mamas of beasts once friends. That midnight huntress was by the baying presently drawn, and on string of silver she sighted the far quarry. True the arrow flew upon release in sky of cracking dawn. The deadly dart struck a sapphire sea shining with morn's aurora into crimson red. Too late, the goddess of the moon found she had killed her dearest friend. The sun rose, and when seen his sentence escalated far beyond sincere intent, he pitied the man, and from his gallery chariot brandished his honeyed bow to mix the hunter's ichor amidst heaven's twinkling tears. And there skilled he the image of the silver goddess's mistaken poem. Even now, on nights when phantomed by spurious thoughts of her, I do not know why it's easier for me to see the complex pattern of warrior's club and shield than the simple slurs of some great Zeus school. But I am thankful for the sympathetic ear, and he whose story locked with love is far more tragic than my own, for more distorted are their reflections in the face of the so priestly than in the face of
I try. That should be. Hi. I'm Ashley. As Megan and Amber both mentioned, we wrote these stories for research and fiction class, and in September I went to Havasupai, which is a kind of tribal land at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. So I was really interested in that whole area. I'd never been to the Grand Canyon before, and I got really interested in the geology around there. So that's kind of what inspired this story. It's called The Great Unconformity. 1.3 billion years, she tells her students. It's a length of time impossible for the human mind to comprehend. For reference, the Earth is only 4.5 billion years old. If you were to save $100 a day, it would still take you 35,616 years to save $1.3 billion. If you were to walk 1.3 billion steps with an average human stride of 2 feet, you could circle the equator nearly 20 times. She tells them this so they will understand the importance of what she tells them next. 1.3 billion years. That is the amount of time missing from the geologic record. She moves to the next slide and shows them a picture of a man at the Grand Canyon, resting his hand on the geologic mystery, the Great Unconformity. A sun hat covers much of his face, making it difficult to parse his emotions, but she imagines that his eyes are wide with awe. It's a feeling to which she can relate.
On the bottom of the canyon wall, the rock is a molten gray with organic quasi-vertical lines that tilt and curve one way and then the other, indecisive and ever-shifting. Another distinctly different layer of rock sits atop, this one a brighter hue of orange, streaked with vertical lines and peppered with some of the oldest fossils known to man. The first layer, she explains, near the man's thumb, is 1.8 billion year old Vishnu basement rock, and just above that, near his little finger, is a Cambrian strata, only a 500 million years old. So the question is, what happened to everything in between? It's a question that geologists have puzzled over for decades, and one that she only allows herself to ask in the context of rocks. She does not, for example, allow herself to consider the in-betweens of her own life. She fancies herself one of those weight loss infomercials, just the before and after photos jammed together with nothing in the middle. The human lifespan, she has decided, is too small, terrifying in its intimacy. The lifespan of a rock is far preferable. It offers distance and perspective where humanity only offers confusion and grief. After class, she collects her things, carefully swabbing each item with a wet wipe. She pours a generous amount of hand sanitizer into the palm of her right hand and spreads it between her fingers, up her forearms, and around her mouth and nose. The ethanol burns her eyes, a sensation that she's been craving since before class started, and she can feel her toes uncurl in her sneakers, releasing the captive fabric of her socks. She usually tries to avoid disinfecting in front of her students because it feels too vulnerable. Graduate student instructors don't have the luxury of age to set them apart from those they teach, so she relies on clandestinity. She pulls a tissue from her pocket and turns off the light switch, careful not to make contact with the plastic. The lecture hall is small, and it feels much more welcoming now without the annoying buzz of fluorescence. On one side of the room, the wall is plated in a rich ebony paneling. On the other, a line of old iron wrought windows letting brief flashes of sunlight that slip through an otherwise oppressive layer of English ivy. As she opens the door to leave, tissue carefully placed over a doorknob, her eyes graze the poster taped above the light switch that reads, "What are your plans?" The poster is intended for undergraduates, advertising a degree exploration fair, but she can't help but feel personally attacked. What are her plans? With 8 measly months until graduation, this is something she ponders quite often and with no small degree of panic. If you had asked about her plans 4 years ago, the answer would have been easy. She planned to become a field researcher, discover new fossils on a weekly basis, solve the mystery of the great unconformity by the age of 30, and spend all of her free time giving TED Talks and polishing her Beckwithson medallion. Simple. Except that it isn't so simple anymore. As she begins the trek to the parking lot, she attempts to quiet her busy thoughts by humming the melody of her mother's favorite song. The sky has already begun to melt into the liminal blue of dusk, and she tries to spot the moon, but is disappointed to only find street lamp after street lamp. Once in her car, she leans back against the headrest and gazes out at the overlook of the valley. The snow on the mountains has mostly melted now, and the base of the range has begun to ripen with foliage. Higher up, the sheer, craggy peaks pierce the sky like arrows. The rock is tens of millions of years old, a relic of another time. She feels a yearning, something akin to love, but cringes at the thought. What kind of loser feels love for rocks? And besides that, what is love if only at a distance, from behind the windshield of sanitized, climate-controlled Mazda 6? For a moment, she considers driving into the mountains, scouring the hiking trails for horned coral, or collecting rock samples like she had done so many times as an undergraduate. But then she thinks of the endoliths, colonies of bacteria and fungi that inhabit the pores of rock. Before the thought can reach her consciousness, she is pushing her sleeves to her elbows and scanning her forearms for signs of rashes. It's not logical, she knows. There's no way she could have cyanotoxin poisoning, but she checks anyway. Better not to risk it. With forearms thoroughly scoured, she huffs and drops her hands back into her lap. It takes a true masochist to dedicate their life to something they fear.
Hi, I'm Clarissa Casper. The essay I'm about to read, I wrote for Matthew Whitaker's Reading and Writing the Environment course. He'd asked the class to write about a time where you had an encounter with nature that changed your way of looking at the world, or an encounter that helped you learn something about yourself. So when I was thinking what to write about, I couldn't help but think about the time that my family was hiking through Capitol Reef National Park, and we almost got caught in a flash flood because it started to pour rain when we were in the Grand Wash. And so I wrote an essay about that, but then I realized that Capitol Reef stored a lot more than just that encounter that showed me, the fragility of life. It also is where my family's from and where lots of my youthful summers were spent. So if I mention the flash flood, it's because it's at the beginning of the essay and I'm reading the end. All right. I had visited Capitol Reef every July of my life up until that moment, and did 4 summers after. We went to visit my father's grandmother, who lived in Loa, a town about a 30-minute drive from the park's entrance, where I recall running down small town streets adjacent to farms and fields of rocks with my cousins, coins bouncing in our pockets to buy grape sodas from a small Rose market. We spent hours at a section of the land locals called Big Rocks, where giant orange boulders entertained us for hours. My grandmother grew up here, living the cowgirl lifestyle in the 1950s. She rode her horse everywhere, even into Capitol Reef, and helped her family manage their farm. The first time I rode a horse was at her brother's farm in Torrey, where bison grazed in the distance. Gatherings where my grandmother and great uncle sang original songs about life in the desert inspired me to want to learn the guitar myself. Their lives were shaped by the rural, unforgiving, and unpredictable nature of the environment. While in Loa for the family reunion, my family would spend hours in the park, exploring the canyons and arches and uniquely shaped structures of assorted colors. By the time I was 8, I had done most of the hikes advertised by the visitor center, and many that they did not. My father did not care about difficulty. He wanted to show his children the world he grew up in, the land where most of his youthful summers were spent. Often when we went, it was July and the blazing sun heated the red rock like a convection oven. Heat exhaustion is quite common here. If not well prepared, one becomes dehydrated very quickly. Sometimes I wish to stay home from the hikes and relax at the motel pool or play at Big Rocks. But looking back, I will always value the time my family spent exploring the colorful canyons that echo the story of my family and a record of the Earth's history. Fortunately, my family reached the parking lot at the mouth of the wash before a flood could reach us. When we made it out safely, a rush of relief, one stronger than a bursting flood, washed over me as I sobbed and hugged my mother. We slogged through the mud, falling everywhere, to a road that we walked along for about 30 minutes to our car. The fragility of life was the topic of my mind during that miserable walk. Safety had always been a guarantee. I learned young to not rely on the idea that everything would work out. Nobody was safe. 5 years before my family nearly washed away in that flash flood, we had taken the journey out to Capitol Reef, not in July, but in February, a week after my birthday. My grandfather, my father's dad, had abruptly died in his 60s the day I turned 4, and he was to be buried in the Loa cemetery. The rain fell hard during his funeral. Bleak drops of water drenched my hair as I watched his casket be lowered into the ground. Brisk air comforted me. After the mourning, my dad drove my family out to Capitol Reef. The sandstone cliffs and prickly cacti I had remembered seeing the July before were blanketed by the same snow as home. My dad drove us here so he could relive the memories he had with his father, and I know I will do the same one day. In any environment, water is a powerful, erosive force, but in the desert, it is paramount. Over time, water has shaped little hollows in the raised, tilted sandstone layers in the water pocket fold, like a patient sculptor. This is where the fold gets its name from. Capitol Reef has shaped who I am, just as its water shapes its majestic cliffs. 4 years after our encounter with the wash, my family and I were driving home from a trip to California when my dad heard from my great aunts and uncles down in Loa that his grandmother was not doing well. When we crossed the Utah border, my dad asked if we could take a 4-hour detour to visit her. Selfishly, my brother and I, tired from being in the car for 9 hours, begged him not to. We did not understand how much it meant to him. A week later, my great-grandmother passed, and I found myself back in Wayne County at the same cemetery where I said goodbye to my grandfather. This was the second to last time the family all went back together. The last time my Aunt Nellie was lowered into the ground next to her dad, preserved in the town of her cowgirl mother, next to sandstone cliffs and desert lakes. Capitol Reef has always been a place of grief and change. It stores my family's history. One day I will return to bury my grandmother, maybe even my parents. Rocks at Capitol Reef record 275 million years of the Earth's history. Its rock beds show Calgary encompasses ancient environments, including open marine, nearshore, river, lake, and desert. In sandstone cliffs, I will always see picnics with a family that no longer exists. I remember riding horses along fields, across fields with buffalo in the distance. Here, there's open space and room to breathe. There's space to think. There's space to fear falling and drowning. There's space to fear death and to be okay with it. It's one of those places that makes me remember what being a human truly means. It is where sandstone cliffs full of history lie under stars that show the past clearer than I've ever seen. Anything can happen here in the flap of a hummingbird's wing, and I will always return to this desert when I need a reminder of what's most important.
Alright, let's give our writers and our artists another round of applause. So now for open mic, is the sign up still in the back or is it making its way around? Yeah, I'm gonna go snag it. It's empty. I know they're hard to follow. Any takers? So each reader will have up to 7 minutes to read. After 7 minutes, they will politely be clapped off. If you do not wish to be recorded for our YouTube archive, please tell us before you read so we can turn off this camera. All right, just one so far. Asher, we'll welcome you on up and we'll see if we have any more takers.
This first poem is written in the wake of the next benefit killing, and so it's called Stay Alive. Tonight I hear the bed strain as my child tosses themselves into a better position for sleep. Tonight, the murder podcast they listen to like bedtime fairy tales filters through the wall between our 2 rooms, keeping me awake. Tonight, my child is healthy and safe inside the home I have built for them. Tonight, another parent mourns for the child that walked alone to the school bus like every other morning. Tonight, that parent's child lies on a metal slab in a cooler, another victim of bureaucracy and queer panic. Tonight, the safe havens I have built for my own child don't feel so safe. Tonight, I wish the parent of a child I never knew a restless evening listening to the hum of voices from a tinny speaker. Tonight, I wish the trans agenda was longer than 9 letters strung together like beads on a wire. Then, I don't know if anyone here went to the workshop that the guest poet did up at Utah State, but this was in response to one of his poems, and it's "The mother that raised my father was not the one who sobbed when the doctor proclaimed her ailment a baby, voice steady and strong, words dropping like bombs while he tried to assure her every child was a blessing. As though being 19, pregnant and unwed in a country a whole ocean away from the older, more sophisticated lover who had fed her pretty words while hiding his wedding band in his left front pocket wasn't the end of her dreams already. Like it didn't destroy the clean slate she tried to find when she boarded the ship for America, knowing she was giving up her homeland and her native tongue, aware that she might never again know the embrace of her mother or hear the rough timbre of her father's laughter, wouldn't be there to watch her younger siblings grow into adulthood. Wasn't the one who felt the flutters in her belly so frightfully aware she couldn't keep her child. The woman who labored long into a dark September night, body shaking through the pain with no one to hold her hand and offer comfort, tears blurring down her cheeks as she was rebuked by a stern nurse for wanting to hold the life she'd grown from scratch. Denied because she already signed him away and his real mother was waiting down the hall to hold the babe she prayed over for years and years. didn't sit through mass week after week, chest bound and aching when the milk came in, like a penance she had to pay to be redeemed of her sins. And then this is also from that workshop. Ironically, about my own mother's family. So, the price of silence. Mama goes room to room, packing our things into empty boxes she picked up from the grocery on the way home from school. No humming hymns under her breath, the way she does making Sunday supper. No Johnny Horton playing in the family room as she washes the dinner dishes, laying them out to dry on the crisp flour sack towel beside the cold steel sink. Silence that sinks in my gut like the flat-bottomed stones my brother tried teaching me to skip across the river, the sky above us washed in dusk. Silence as we sneaked outside the faded house with its crooked porch where Daddy raged, red-faced and stumbling through the bedroom. Mama sobbed into arms folded like a prayer atop the linen tablecloth Grandma bought new for the hope chest at her wedding. Silence as the hymnal is placed careful beside the checkered cookbook with Gran's handwriting scribbled neat as a pin in the margins. Silence when she wraps some ancestor's Bible with its threadbare spine into folds of brown paper sack, the same she wraps my brother's school books every September, protecting the 4 generations of names crammed into the blank page between the front cover and Genesis 1:1. Names that trace the family line, Irwin, Edgars, Carr, Taylor, carry them back to the hills of Kentucky, to the one-room schoolhouse where Gran learned to write straight and small, to the private cemetery, lichen-covered stones standing guard over the unmarked corner where the most treasured, most obedient slaves were finally laid to rest, their names unrecorded on the flat river stones to mark their beds, to a time when women didn't strip the marriage bed, pack away the wedding china, gather up their 5 young ones in their quest to divorce their alcoholic husbands.
It's back there now.
Back there.
Way to go, Woody.
Next we have Abby, Eva, and Woody.
The first one is called It's Okay, It's Just Sleeping. There it was, half hidden in the grass, his heartbeat drumming, breath panting, eyes darting wildly. Can I keep it? I'm sure my mother knew, but rigor mortis had already set in. The stroke of a finger, revulsion, in the space between here and there, in nearly swallowing myself, in the swallowing moments sinking to the depths, as if God hid his building blocks in the empty season. Mom, can't we just go on existing forever? Summer passes. Bodies are fashioned out of dirt and dust. Bugs die, grass withers, trees stand, a stick monument to the world buried beneath mountains of snow, waiting for a resurrection of all that was beautiful, waiting for God to resurrect the color of divinity. Hey you, look closely. It's all chalk washed off the sidewalk, leaving only the memory of color. This next poem is titled Girl at Mantle. I left the stove on again and the greedy little flame crept out, escaped the burner, snacked on towels hung on the oven, tugged too hard, ate up the whole kitchen, badly behaved. It snuck in easy through the wall, caught on picture frames, caught on grandmother's portrait, caught on lamp, spun around, gnawed away at the lampshade, melted a floral vase with hot spindly fingers, counted cigarette burns in the couch, coughed and billowed, smashed the glass in the coffee table. Who needs coffee tables anyways? Tore down long trains of curtains swept over dirty glass, ash glass, plucked loose threads from the carpet, drive heat across the base floors, across the painting above the fireplace of a girl reclining in billowing skirts. Hot hands, hot tongue, flicking, flicking, pricking, hacking up heavy hollow shadows, soot shadows, but stop to consider grief-stained bricks and old silver pieces abandoned on the mantle. A little figure of a boy, there a small chair, round, sooty, serene, smoke slipped between silver vases and miniature teapots. It was beautiful for me, rising, just like me. I said, I can take shelter in the fireplace if he's sexually desperate. And this last poem is titled Supplication. Desire hovers, clings to my conscience, a haze of cobwebs lingering in forgotten corners of the bathroom. It tips its hat to me, fellow survivor, smiles with its sly mouth and eases past my stomach in a sink of selling scissors. Someone's knocking at the door. Knock, knock, knock. Someone peers through the peephole, peels my eye back like a shower curtain, a slick marble, round and moist, pressed under the thumb. Feel how it jitters back and forth. The phone rings. It's me. I'm at the door. Let me in. The door is jammed and I cannot pry it open. There's a metaphor in there somewhere, I'm sure, but I can't find it, so I slip the key under the rug instead. Someone's jiggling the doorknob. Let me in. I stand near the bathroom mirror, a naked wet shadow painted in blue. We've gone down this road before, you and I, like broken blisters on the bathwater, caught in the moment before waking. I take shame between my teeth and bite down. The door trembles. Open the door, open the door. I drown in small gaspings, the pop of a champagne bottle, fist filling against my lips and dripping down the front of my shirt. A declaration caught like a hangnail on wood. I was the one to line your empty pockets with peat and grass. Someone leaves the window open instead. Just once, I wanted to say yes. Is it your fault if I'm the one to crack the lock? Is it regret if the clock takes back its tick? Forgiveness, what a fly this book would want. We wanted all of it and none of the consequences. Is it enough for me to turn off the light and simply close my eyes? The answer is in the towing. You stand there waiting the hallway, waiting the way a dog hovers over an empty people. I have nothing to compare you with, just a collage of empty picture frames, the wound and the suture. So tell me, can I lie and say it isn't a gesture to regret a day and then another, saying Father, dear Father, and Bloody Mary in front of the bathroom mirror?
Hi, my name is Eva, and I will be doing two poems I wrote for Ben Gunsberg's class. This first one's supposed to be a multimodal poem, so just like imagine the most unappealing guitar you've ever heard over it, and that you're good. I think so ill of you. We were of the same ilk. You said we were encased in a tiny ball together. In that case, I made a coop in you. I birthed eggs that were promptly cooked, cocked, and shot. Sparrows kill in the tall grasses. Embryos invade embryos in the new coop. Suicides replace killings under the new moon. There's a heavy bend in my behavior. My empathy's been sprained. This heat in me is charring. And, thank you. This next one is called Born into Trouble. I was pushed into the light. My dad was silent after uncovering a beige bra on the gray backseat of my car. I labored to explain it fit so well. My mother said for 19 years I could trust her. When I showed her my makeup palette of pinks, reds, and oranges, she threw it against the wall and painted a sunset. My driving was turmoil. I was in a fit of nausea. My stomach spun like wheels accelerating past 70. I ran my car into the trash can that sits in front of my garage. Leaving the can, I slumped up the stairs and inside. I lay on my bathroom floor for hours, surrounded by dirty tiles, before getting into the bath. The water grew as warm as the womb. I flowed in the fetal position, born into trouble. And that's all I have.
I'm Woody. I wrote a lot of these. I wrote a chapbook for Jennifer Snyder's class this semester, and I've got a couple of them to share. The first one is a little bit triggering, so I'm sorry about that. I used to work at a treatment facility, and so, you know, of course, I'm using the trauma to fuel good writing, I guess, but, or that was the hope. But, yeah, so this one does deal with the suicide attempt, so I'm sorry for that, if that triggers it. I worked at a treatment center for a year and a half. One of the boys in my care, Nate, had been exhibiting depressive behavior recently, so we placed him on suicide watch. This meant he had to stay within sight of staff and couldn't use real silverware. He was also limited to 1 hour of outside time since our facility was near a highway. Shower time came and the boys increased their noise, a nightly ritual, their final protest. Nate had been in the shower for just over his allotted 10 minutes. Nate, brother, time's up. No answer. I knew he had a hard day, so I let it slide 1 minute before returning. Come on, Nate. If you don't come out, I have to come in, and none of us want that level of awkwardness in our lives. No answer. Really? I asked, jingling the keyring next to the door. Why put us in this position, dude? No answer. My stomach turned upside down. Another boy watching the scene yelled out, "What's the matter? Is he dead?" I leaned my head in the common room and barked, "Shut your fucking mouth," while I wrestled with the keys. The door gave way to a steam-filled room. An empty bottle of hand soap rested on the counter with its lid on the side. I wrenched open the curtains to find Nate unconscious on the floor of the shower. He wasn't breathing. I pulled at him, dragged his limp body to the rug. A rubber cord gripped his neck. I clawed at it. I pulled it as hard as I could, trying to snap it. It dug deep into the back of his neck. My fingers turned purplish black before a coworker cut the cord with scissors. Chest compressions forced soapy liquid and bile out of his mouth and onto his face, into his eyes and nose. I wiped it away and forced breath into his lungs. Still no breathing. Come on, buddy, don't go. Nate, come on, buddy, please. Chest compressions, wipe him off, breathe for him. Chest compressions, wipe off, breathe. Chest compressions, wipe, breathe. Don't stop. Don't fucking stop. Don't fucking die, goddammit. Then he coughed. I heard the air catch in his throat, blocked by soap and congealed mucus. I watched his eyes open. I saw him see me. I saw him go away again, eyes still open. Silence. I screamed the word no more times than I can count. I slapped his cheeks hard, my hands slipping in the fluid. I shook his shoulders, his head bouncing off the floor. I watched him become a wet corpse before my eyes. Chest compressions. I saw vomit, spit, and soap and water coat the carpet around his head. I saw my tears falling into the slick on his face. I wiped it off and put my mouth on his. I lost myself. Sir, we can take it from here. Sir, you've done a great job. You need to stop now. A nitrile hand on my shoulder pulled me away. I silently stood and moved to the common room, which had been empty for some time. My legs gave out. I watched them carry Nate past me on a stretcher, but when I try to envision it now, the image distorts and blurs. When I stepped into the doorway of Nate's ER, we said the same thing at the same time. I'm so sorry. I rushed over to the side of his bed and threw my arms around him. I kissed the top of his head and said, "You scared the fucking shit out of me, kid." "Yeah, me too," he said. He stared down at his blanket, couldn't look at me. When he found the courage to, my world changed. One of his eyes angled outward, a permanent repercussion of the lack of oxygen to his brain. "You know you saved my life tonight, right?" he asked. Now I can't look at him. His eyes make me hate myself for not keeping a closer watch. In him I see those lightless orbs staring back at me, buried beneath a layer of viscous fluid. Everything, everyone looks different now. The next one's a little more fun. It's just kind of this was a chapbook that was based on life and death, and this one I kind of just wanted to play with the idea of fire. Human obsession with it. A young child runs out the front door, action figures and monster truck carts in hand. The door slams and they throw their toys in a pile. Reaching into their pocket, they pull out a wand lighter they stole from the kitchen drawer. A wicked smile creases their otherwise innocent features. The primary test is conducted on a monster truck. Surprisingly, the rubber tires ignite first. They morph into molten black blobs. A bright yellow light produces the scent of sulfur. The flame sputters out if the heat is removed, sending a single line of smoke skyward. The child makes a mental note not to inhale. Next to burn is the car's chassis. A much longer exposure to flame is required before it erupts. A large amount of smoke precedes these flames. Blue tendrils reach out the windows of the vehicle, grasping at the sky. Those that manage to escape flick yellow before they disappear. The child feels a black joy at the sight. The final experiment is conducted on the corpse of a fallen Power Ranger. This flame sets quickly. The helmet melts as the child holds it. Her flame is yellow too, aside from the tip, which is blue. A molten crown boasting a liquid sapphire. A drip falls from the head to the child's hand, scarring their flesh instantly. The Ranger falls to the concrete where it leaves burn marks that never wash off. The perfect steak comes from a fastidious process. Each step must be adhered to lest the slaughter be in vain. Clean the butchered meat of excess blood, then bring it to room temperature. To ensure even cooking throughout, the center must be the same as the exterior. Once the flesh is acclimated, season it. The more aggressive, the better. But at least ground salt and black pepper are required. Be sure to scrape the meat into the residuals. Cause the salt to enter the flesh. Mop it up. Preheat the metal to between 450 and 500 degrees. Cast iron creates the coolest sear. Add oil to the pan. This prevents the exterior from sticking when we flip the flesh. Press the steak down, do not move it. Watch the flame weave its spell. Note your mouth as it waters. Shiver as the hiss of death kisses your ears. Ecstasy beckons. After 30 seconds, turn it over. No time now to save the process. Continue swiftly. Add butter, garlic, and thyme to the pan. They will create the last line of defense between the corpse and the flame. As they collide, their flavor emerges. Love is key. Test the meat with a thermometer only once you believe it has reached the desired heat. Each piercing of the flesh releases more of the precious juices. Be sure to sear closed any holes you make. Now remove the result from the pan. It needs to rest before we devour it piece by bloody piece. Once the autopsy is over and cause of death determined, prosthetic parts and/or implants are to be removed. The body is kept in a temperature-controlled room and placed into combustible vessels. This is the last time the body is ever seen. The vessel is placed into a furnace. The chamber into which the vessel is placed is called the retort. The heat of the furnace is raised to up to 1800 degrees Fahrenheit. The only place these temperatures occur in nature is deep within the pyroclastic enzymes of the earth. Flames envelop and consume the vessel and the form that lay within. These flames are maintained for up to 3 hours. The liquids evaporate, only bones remain. Then the bones become brittle. They break under their own weight until all that's left are the small fragments of bone and ash. A magnet is passed over the top of the pile to remove any metal. Then the human particles are collected and placed into a cremulator. The device grinds and crushes the remaining pieces into fine ash. This treasure is brought home. It is placed on the mantle where it can be seen. It is put in the closet where it never will be again. It is brought to a forest where its contents can return to the earth. It stays in our hearts whether we wish it or not, and we are transformed.
Thank you so much, as my leaders. I appreciate it. So, I am so proud of our students, and I hope you all are too. Our writers and artists are incredible. Please join us at the next Helicon West on May 23rd at 7 p.m. and all open mic night. As you leave, we'd appreciate any help stacking chairs if you're able, and please take cookies on your way out. Thank you again for joining us to celebrate our incredible writers and artists.
Thank you, Ashley.